Do you remember the African-American foods Grandma always had on the table? They filled mid-century kitchens with rich aromas and generations of family care. Which of those everyday comforts have we quietly let fade away? Collard greens with smoked turkey filled Grandma's kitchen with the aroma of slow-simmered comfort that wrapped every guest in welcome before a single plate was set. She started with fresh collard leaves rinsed and torn by hand, then layered them into a heavy pot with smoked turkey necks or wings whose rich essence seeped deep into the greens as they cooked. A splash of vinegar, a pinch of red pepper flakes, and the patient heat of a low flame transformed those hearty leaves into something tender and soulful. The turkey gave a gentle smokiness while the long simmer coaxed every bit of flavor into the potlikker that everyone wanted to sip with cornbread. This dish was a fixture at Sunday dinners, church gatherings, and weeknight suppers alike because it turned inexpensive ingredients into a meal that tasted of celebration and care. Families across the South passed down their own small twists, but the heart of the recipe remained the same, a slow dance of greens and smoke that honored heritage and nourished body and spirit. Collard greens with smoked turkey stayed on Grandma's table as a reminder that patience and tradition create flavors money alone cannot buy. Buttermilk biscuits rose in the oven like soft clouds, their buttery layers promising warmth and comfort from the very first scent that drifted through the house. Grandma mixed flour, salt, and baking powder with cold bits of butter and tangy buttermilk, working the dough gently so it stayed tender. She cut the rounds with an old drinking glass and set them close together on a heavy baking sheet so they would rise high and share their heat. When they emerged golden brown and steaming, everyone gathered quickly, eager to split them open while they were still too hot to hold. Honey, syrup, or gravy turned each biscuit into its own small feast, while a smear of jam added a sweet note that made even a simple morning feel special. These biscuits were never reserved for grand occasions. They appeared beside fried chicken with collard greens or next to a bowl of beans, grounding every meal in home and heart. Their flaky layers carried the memory of many hands that had shaped them and the quiet pride of a cook who knew that the simplest bread could bring a family together again and again. Sweet potato pie was the dessert that anchored holidays and Sunday dinners, its warm spice and creamy filling as familiar as a favorite hymn. Grandma roasted the sweet potatoes until their natural sugars caramelized, then mashed them smooth with butter, sugar, and a careful blend of cinnamon, nutmeg, and vanilla. The scent of baking pie filled every corner of the house, pulling children from their games and adults from quiet conversations to peek into the oven. Its rich orange custard settled into a flaky crust that shattered delicately under a fork, releasing a steam that smelled like celebration itself. Served with whipped cream or simply on its own, each slice carried the sweetness of the harvest and the comfort of tradition. No holiday table felt complete without it, and no family gathering ended until every last crumb was gone. The pie told a story of African-American kitchens where resourcefulness met artistry, turning humble roots into a dish of elegance. Sweet potato pie remained a symbol of love and memory, proof that the simplest ingredients could create a flavor that lasted long after the plates were cleared and the evening grew quiet. Okra and tomatoes brought garden freshness and gentle southern tang to Grandma's table, a skillet dish that shimmered with color and flavor. She began by sautéing onions and garlic in a splash of oil until fragrant, then added sliced okra whose emerald pods softened as they released a subtle richness. Ripe tomatoes followed, their juices mingling with the okra to create a sauce that thickened naturally without losing its bright edge. A sprinkle of salt, pepper, and a pinch of cayenne lent quiet heat, while a final dash of vinegar balanced the sweetness. Served over rice or alongside cornbread, the dish celebrated the summer harvest and the creativity of cooks who turned what grew in their yards into sustaining meals. Children learned to love the gentle texture, and adults cherished the reminder of long, warm afternoons spent in shared gardens. Okra and tomatoes carried the history of African and Southern influences, blending flavors that traveled across oceans and generations. Each bite held the memory of backyard plots, community markets, and the patient hands that knew how to turn simple vegetables into food worth gathering around with gratitude and joy. Black-eyed peas with ham hock simmered in a pot that whispered of prosperity and hope, especially when the new year arrived and families sought good fortune. Grandma soaked the peas overnight, then cooked them slowly with a smoked ham hock whose savory marrow enriched every bean. Aromatic onions, garlic, and bay leaves infused the broth while the peas grew tender and creamy, carrying a gentle earthiness that tasted of comfort. On New Year's Day, the dish held special meaning, each pea symbolizing a coin of luck for the year ahead. But it was welcome at ordinary suppers too because it fed many with little cost. Served over fluffy rice or beside warm cornbread, it brought everyone to the table in quiet celebration of heritage and resilience. The ham hock's deep flavor reminded diners of the tradition of using every part of the animal, a practice born from necessity and cherished as wisdom. Black-eyed peas with ham hock remained more than food. It was a ritual of faith and family, a sustaining dish that connected generations through shared hope and delicious memory. Cornbread skillet came to the table golden and fragrant, edges crisp from the heat of well-seasoned cast iron that never left Grandma's stove. She stirred cornmeal with flour, baking powder, milk, and a drizzle of bacon drippings, creating a batter that hissed when it touched the hot pan. The oven transformed it into a bread with a tender crumb and a crust that crackled under a knife, sending up a warm corn scent that made mouths water. Served with collard greens, black-eyed peas, or simply a pat of butter and a drizzle of sorghum syrup, it was the faithful companion to almost every meal. Its rustic simplicity spoke of fields and hard work, while its satisfying flavor turned even humble suppers into a feast. Every family had its own version, some sweet, some savory, but all carried the same spirit of nourishment and care. Cornbread skillet was more than side bread, it was the flavor of tradition, a daily reminder that the best dishes are often the simplest, passed from hand to hand and loved in every bite. Fried catfish brought a sense of celebration to Friday nights and Saturday gatherings, a dish that promised crisp golden fillets with each sizzle of hot oil. Grandma coated fresh cleaned fish in seasoned cornmeal, the grains clinging lightly to the flesh before it slipped into the bubbling pan. The kitchen filled with the sound of crackling and the aroma of spice, drawing family and neighbors alike toward the stove. When the catfish emerged perfectly browned and flaky inside, it was laid on paper to drain and then served with lemon wedges, tartar sauce, or a simple sprinkle of salt. Children loved the crunchy crust, while elders savored the sweet, tender meat that spoke of rivers and fishing trips long past. Fried catfish joined coleslaw, cornbread, and tall glasses of sweet tea on the table, turning an ordinary evening into a shared feast. It honored the tradition of using local catch and patient frying skill, reminding everyone that celebration could be found in the bounty of nearby waters and the laughter of a crowded kitchen. Hoppin John carried the deep roots of Gullah Geechee heritage, a simple yet profound combination of rice and black-eyed peas seasoned with onions, bacon, and a hint of spice. Grandma rinsed the peas carefully, then simmered them with smoky bacon until the broth turned rich and savory. Fluffy rice was folded in just before serving, allowing every grain to absorb the flavorful liquid. The dish arrived on New Year's Day to invite luck and prosperity, but appeared throughout the year because its taste and meaning were too good to reserve for one occasion. Families gathered to share heaping bowls, pairing it with collard greens and cornbread to complete a meal that honored ancestors and celebrated community. Each bite told the story of African traditions carried to the Low Country and kept alive through generations of careful cooking and storytelling. Hoppin John was both everyday comfort and sacred ritual, a warm reminder that food is culture and memory woven together, keeping history alive in kitchens filled with love and steadfast pride. Pecan pie offered a slice of sweet Southern indulgence that shone like amber in the light, its glossy filling studded with crunchy toasted nuts. Grandma blended sugar, eggs, and dark syrup into a smooth mixture before folding in fresh pecans harvested from local trees or market stalls. Baked until the filling set into a soft caramel and the nuts formed a fragrant crust, the pie emerged rich enough to satisfy the biggest sweet tooth. Served with whipped cream or a simple pour of coffee, it ended Sunday dinners and holiday feasts with a touch of elegance. The pecan pie reflected generations of African-American cooks who elevated humble ingredients into timeless desserts, combining resourcefulness with artistry. Each slice carried the warmth of family gatherings and the shared stories told after plates were cleared. The sweetness was never only sugar. It was memory, tradition, and the pride of turning nature's gifts into celebration. Pecan pie remained a centerpiece on Grandma's table, a dessert that whispered of southern forests and the enduring creativity of the cooks who came before. Braised oxtails brought deep comfort and a richness that spoke of patience and care, transforming a tough cut into a dish fit for celebration. Grandma browned the oxtails slowly, coaxing flavor from every bone, then simmered them for hours with onions, carrots, and a blend of spices until the meat softened and the broth thickened into a velvety gravy. Served over rice or with a side of buttered vegetables, the tender pieces fell from the bone and released a savory aroma that filled the entire home. This recipe honored a tradition of using every part of the animal, a practice born of necessity, but elevated into an art by generations of African-American cooks. Guests lingered at the table long after plates were cleaned, savoring the warmth of the meal and the stories shared between bites. Braised oxtails reminded everyone that flavor lives in the overlooked, and that love expressed through slow cooking creates a feast richer than any expensive cut could offer. It was a dish of heritage and heart, always worth the hours it demanded. Mustard greens with salt pork brought a lively, peppery bite and a deep, smoky richness to Grandma's table, proving that even the boldest greens could become pure comfort with careful cooking. She washed the leaves in several changes of cold water to remove every speck of grit before dropping them into a heavy pot where salt pork sizzled low and slow. As the pork rendered, it released a savory aroma that filled the house and flavored the greens from stem to tip. A splash of vinegar and a sprinkle of crushed red pepper balanced the smoky salt, creating a potlikker so tasty that everyone saved cornbread for soaking. The long simmer softened the greens without stealing their character, leaving them tender but still bright with earthy flavor. Neighbors often stopped by when they smelled the steam drifting from open windows, and Grandma never failed to share a bowl. These greens carried a story of resourcefulness and heritage, reminding every diner that thrift and tradition could make even a humble garden harvest a feast worth celebrating together. Candied yams glowed like amber in the oven, their natural sweetness deepened by slow baking with brown sugar, butter, and a dusting of cinnamon and nutmeg that perfumed the entire kitchen. Grandma sliced the peeled yams into thick rounds, arranging them in a heavy dish where melted butter mingled with warm spices and a drizzle of molasses. As they baked, the syrup bubbled and thickened, coating every slice in a glossy glaze that turned simple root vegetables into dessert worthy of the finest table. Served alongside savory meats or as a standalone treat, each bite brought the soft texture of caramelized yams and the unmistakable comfort of home. Children loved the sticky sweetness, while adults savored the memory of holiday gatherings where this dish was never missing. Candied yams embodied celebration and care, proof that a handful of pantry staples could create a flavor as rich as any confectioner's art. Their glowing color and irresistible aroma made them a centerpiece that connected generations with every warm, spiced mouthful, from the very first forkful to the last sweet spoon scraping the pan. Homemade peach cobbler turned the bounty of summer peaches into a dessert that felt both rustic and luxurious, the scent alone enough to draw neighbors to the door. Grandma peeled and sliced ripe peaches, tossing them with a touch of sugar and a squeeze of lemon to keep their sunny flavor bright. She topped the fruit with either a tender biscuit crust or a lattice of buttery pastry, brushing it with milk so it baked to a golden sheen. As the cobbler cooked, juices bubbled up around the crust, caramelizing at the edges into sticky, fragrant pockets of sweetness. Served warm with a dollop of cream or a scoop of ice cream if it could be found, the cobbler captured the taste of long afternoons and full orchard baskets. Every bite carried the balance of tart fruit and flaky dough, a perfect harmony that made even ordinary days feel like a celebration. Homemade peach cobbler remained the definition of summer comfort, a simple masterpiece that proved fresh fruit and patient hands could create unforgettable memories and the sweetest endings. Smothered pork chops filled the house with the rich aroma of onions caramelizing in pan drippings, a Sunday dish that demanded both patience and a big appetite. Grandma seasoned thick chops with salt and black pepper before browning them in a heavy skillet, letting the fat render and the meat turn golden. She removed the chops, added sliced onions, and deglazed the pan with a splash of broth to capture every flavorful bit. The chops returned to the skillet, bathing in the onion gravy as it simmered to a silky consistency that coated each piece in deep, savory comfort. Served with rice or mashed potatoes, the meal was hearty enough to satisfy a full table after church or a long day's work. Each bite offered tender meat and a rich sauce that tasted of care and tradition. Smothered pork chops reminded everyone that simple ingredients treated with time and love could transform an everyday cut of meat into a feast fit for family and honored guests alike, turning an ordinary evening into something remembered. Butter beans with ham created a bowl of quiet richness, the creamy beans soaking up smoky flavor until every spoonful was velvety and satisfying. Grandma soaked the beans overnight, then simmered them gently with a ham bone or diced ham, onions, and a bay leaf until the broth grew thick and fragrant. The beans softened slowly, releasing a subtle sweetness that mingled with the savory meat to create a natural creaminess without added dairy. Served over rice or alongside cornbread, this dish could stand alone as a meal or share the table with greens and roasted vegetables. Children loved the gentle texture, and adults savored the deep flavors that spoke of patient cooking and resourceful kitchens. Butter beans with ham showed how a modest pantry could yield abundance, turning a humble legume into a dish that felt both comforting and complete. Every bite carried the memory of slow afternoons and the quiet music of a simmering pot. A reminder that the best meals often begin with the simplest beginnings and the wisdom to let them unfold slowly. Chicken and dumplings warmed the family through cold evenings with a blend of rich broth and tender pillows of dough that melted on the tongue. Grandma stewed a whole chicken with carrots, celery, and onions until the meat was fall-apart tender, filling the kitchen with a savory aroma that signaled comfort ahead. She rolled and cut soft dumpling dough, dropping each piece into the bubbling pot where it puffed and absorbed the flavorful stock. The result was a thick, hearty stew that brought everyone to the table quickly, eager for steaming bowls that promised both nourishment and love. Leftovers rarely lasted beyond the next day as the flavors deepened overnight, making it even better when reheated. Chicken and dumplings embodied the spirit of using every part of the bird and stretching a single chicken to feed many mouths. It was a dish of community and resilience, reminding all who tasted it that the simplest ingredients, handled with patience and care, could become a meal that comforted body and heart through the hardest seasons. Red beans and rice carried the soulful influence of Louisiana into kitchens far beyond New Orleans, bringing smoky spice and creamy texture to weeknight suppers. Grandma soaked red beans overnight, then simmered them with andouille sausage or ham, onions, garlic, and a blend of bay leaves and cayenne until the beans softened and the sauce thickened into a rich gravy. Fluffy white rice provided the perfect base, soaking up the flavorful liquid and making a little meat feed a large family. The dish needed hours of gentle heat, which allowed flavors to meld and deepen until every bite delivered warmth and satisfaction. Served with cornbread or a simple green salad, red beans and rice became both a comfort food and a cultural bridge, honoring the Creole and African traditions that shaped its history. Families carried their own variations, but the heart of the recipe remained the same. A generous pot meant for sharing. It was a meal that invited conversation and laughter, proving that the best food nourishes both hunger and connection with every fragrant spoonful. Okra gumbo stood as a celebration of West African and Creole heritage, a thick stew that blended land and sea into layers of complex flavor. Grandma began with a dark roux, stirring patiently until it turned the color of mahogany, the foundation of gumbo's depth. She added chopped onions, celery, and bell peppers, the holy trinity of Louisiana cooking, before folding in sliced okra, whose natural thickening power gave the dish its signature body. Shrimp, chicken, or sausage joined the pot depending on what was available, and a generous seasoning of garlic, thyme, and cayenne brought heat and aroma. The gumbo simmered for hours, each ingredient merging into a rich, harmonious whole that filled the house with irresistible fragrance. Served over warm rice and shared with neighbors or visiting relatives, it became more than a meal. It was a story of migration, adaptation, and community. Okra gumbo honored traditions carried across oceans and generations, proving that patience and shared history could turn a simple stew into a celebration of culture and enduring family ties. Sweet tea was the unofficial welcome drink at every gathering, a simple yet essential part of Southern hospitality that never failed to refresh. Grandma brewed strong black tea in a heavy pot, stirring in plenty of sugar while the liquid was still hot so the sweetness melted completely. She cooled it with ice and sometimes a few lemon slices, creating a drink that sparkled with balance, bold but never bitter, sweet but never cloying. Pitchers of sweet tea sat on picnic tables at reunions, church socials, and front porch visits, ready to quench thirst on the hottest afternoons. Children clinked ice cubes in tall glasses while elders lingered in conversation, the drink binding generations in a shared ritual of welcome. More than a beverage, sweet tea was a gesture of care and connection, an invitation to sit, rest, and stay a while. Its golden hue and crisp flavor became a symbol of community itself, reminding everyone that hospitality often begins with the simplest offering poured with love and a steady hand. Homemade blackberry jam captured the deep purple sweetness of summer, turning backyard berries into a spread that brightened breakfasts long after the season passed. Grandma and the children picked berries in the warm sun, fingers stained with juice as baskets filled with fruit. Back in the kitchen, she cooked the berries slowly with sugar and a squeeze of lemon until the mixture thickened and the scent of ripe fruit filled the air. Carefully ladled into sterilized jars, the jam sealed in the taste of sunny days and family effort. Spread on warm biscuits or toast, it offered a burst of brightness on cold mornings and a reminder of the work and love behind every jar. Sharing those jars with neighbors or bringing them to church suppers strengthened bonds across the community, turning a simple preserve into a gift of friendship. Homemade blackberry jam was more than a condiment. It was memory captured in glass, a sweet testament to family labor and the joy of preserving nature's fleeting abundance for seasons to come. Pan-fried corn filled Grandma's kitchen with the aroma of sizzling butter and smoky bacon drippings as fresh kernels popped and crackled in the skillet. She cut the corn straight from the cob, scraping down to release every drop of sweet milk that would thicken the dish naturally. A quick sauté with chopped onions and a pinch of salt transformed the golden kernels into a side that tasted of late summer fields and backyard gatherings. The butter and drippings coated each piece in a savory glaze, while the natural sugars caramelized into gentle sweetness. Served alongside fried catfish or with a warm slice of cornbread, pan-fried corn was the kind of simple dish that turned an ordinary meal into a feast. Children loved the way the kernels burst with flavor, and adults appreciated how it paired with nearly everything on the table. This skillet tradition captured the heart of Southern cooking, where nothing from a fresh harvest went to waste and every ingredient was celebrated. Each spoonful brought the sweetness of the garden and the richness of the smoke together in perfect harmony that lingered well after supper ended. Country-style green beans with potatoes simmered slowly until the beans softened and the potatoes absorbed every savory drop of seasoned broth. Grandma started with fresh snapped beans, tossing them into a large pot with chunks of potato, sliced onion, and pieces of ham or smoked turkey for depth. Hours of gentle cooking turned the vegetables tender while keeping their natural flavor alive. The potatoes thickened the broth just enough to coat each bite with a comforting richness that needed no extra gravy. This dish often sat at the center of Sunday dinners, balancing heavier meats with the simple satisfaction of vegetables cooked with care. The aroma filled the house, drawing family members to peek under the lid for a taste before the meal began. Served with cornbread to soak up the potlikker, it offered the perfect blend of hearty and wholesome, Country-style green beans with potatoes showed how patience and a handful of humble ingredients could create a meal that felt abundant, nourishing everyone gathered around the table with love and tradition. Pound cake with lemon glaze stood as the quiet star of many Sunday visits, its dense yet tender crumb carrying a subtle sweetness that never felt heavy. Grandma creamed butter and sugar by hand, adding eggs one at a time until the batter turned smooth and pale. She folded in flour and a splash of milk, then baked the cake slowly so it rose evenly and developed a golden crust. When cooled, she drizzled a bright lemon glaze over the top, the citrus scent filling the room and sparking instant anticipation. Each slice revealed a moist interior that held its shape beautifully, perfect for pairing with coffee or tea during long conversations after church. Guests often left with an extra piece wrapped carefully in wax paper, a small gift that carried the warmth of the gathering home. Pound cake with lemon glaze was more than dessert. It was a symbol of welcome and care, a recipe passed down like a family story, ready to delight anyone who walked through Grandma's door seeking sweetness and company. Pickled okra added a lively crunch to the pantry shelf, its tangy brine bringing a burst of flavor that brightened heavy meals. Grandma packed slender pods into glass jars with garlic, dill, mustard seeds, and a touch of red pepper for gentle heat. Hot vinegar brine was poured over the vegetables, sealing in the freshness of the garden and transforming the okra into a snack that stayed crisp for months. The jars lined the cupboard like jewels, each one a promise of summer in the cold months ahead. At family gatherings, pickled okra appeared beside platters of fried chicken or bowls of greens, offering a sharp bite that cut through rich gravies and smoky meats. Children loved sneaking pieces straight from the jar, while adults added them to salads or relish trays. This simple preserve reflected the resourcefulness of Southern kitchens, where nothing from the harvest went unused. Pickled okra proved that with a little vinegar and time, even a humble vegetable could become a treasured treat, carrying the memory of sunlit fields into every season. Homemade Chow relish brought a sweet, tart spark to Grandma's table, brightening slow-cooked greens and beans with each spoonful. She chopped cabbage, onions, and bell peppers, mixing them with mustard seeds, celery seed, and a hint of sugar before simmering everything in vinegar until the kitchen smelled of warmth and spice. The mixture thickened into a colorful relish that balanced sweetness with a gentle tang, a flavor that could cut through the smokiest ham or the richest pot of collards. Jars of chow lined the pantry, ready to accompany nearly any meal from Sunday dinners to casual weekday suppers. Guests always reached for it, knowing that a dollop would transform even simple cornbread into something lively and memorable. The relish spoke of late summer gardens when vegetables were plentiful, and preserving meant carrying sunshine into winter. Homemade chow was more than a condiment. It was a legacy of thrift and creativity, a way to honor the harvest while adding a burst of bright flavor to every plate that graced Grandma's well-worn table. Fried green tomatoes offered a crisp, tangy side dish that turned unripe fruit into golden bites of pure Southern comfort. Grandma sliced firm green tomatoes, dusted them in seasoned cornmeal, and slid them into a hot skillet where they sizzled until the coating browned to perfection. The tartness of the tomato softened just enough during cooking to balance the crunchy crust, creating a flavor both bright and savory. Served with a drizzle of buttermilk dressing or a simple sprinkle of salt, these slices made the perfect partner to fried fish or a plate of grits. Children reached for them as eagerly as adults, enjoying the playful mix of textures and tastes. Fried green tomatoes were a lesson in resourcefulness, ensuring that no part of the garden harvest went to waste when frost threatened or tomatoes ripened unevenly. Each batch carried the memory of late summer days and the satisfying sound of a skillet working its magic. They remained a cherished tradition, proving that even the greenest fruit could shine when given time, care, and a little cornmeal crunch. Sweet corn pudding combined the natural sweetness of fresh kernels with a creamy custard base to create a dish beloved at church suppers and holiday feasts. Grandma cut the corn from the cob, capturing every bit of its milky juice, then stirred it into a mixture of eggs, milk, and a touch of sugar. Baked until the edges browned and the center set softly, the pudding emerged fragrant and lightly sweet, a perfect companion to roasted meats or spicy greens. Its velvety texture balanced savory plates while offering a gentle sweetness that appealed to children and adults alike. Served warm with a pat of butter, it brought comfort that lingered beyond the meal. Sweet corn pudding celebrated the harvest and the quiet skill of turning simple ingredients into something elegant. Whether shared at a community dinner or enjoyed on a quiet evening, it stood as proof that patience and a well-seasoned pan could transform everyday corn into a dish worthy of celebration and memory. Grits with cheese and butter delivered pure warmth in a bowl, a creamy staple that nourished at breakfast and soothed at supper. Grandma simmered stone-ground grits in salted water, stirring constantly until they reached a smooth, comforting texture. She added rich butter and a handful of sharp cheese, letting the flavors melt together into a dish that was both hearty and indulgent. Served alongside eggs in the morning or paired with shrimp or fried fish at night, the grits adapted to every occasion with ease. Children loved the mild creaminess, while adults savored the subtle bite of the cheese. This humble dish reflected the enduring roots of Southern cooking, where corn and dairy came together to create lasting comfort. Grits with cheese and butter reminded everyone that a simple pot stirred with care could feed both body and soul, turning even the busiest day into a moment of calm satisfaction and quiet joy shared around the family table. Stewed chicken with rice filled the kitchen with the rich scent of garlic, herbs, and slow-cooked comfort that wrapped the family in warmth long before dinner was served. Grandma browned the chicken pieces to seal in flavor, then let them simmer with onions, celery, and fragrant bay leaves until the meat turned tender and the broth thickened naturally. Fluffy rice absorbed the savory juices, creating a dish that was both hearty and deeply satisfying. Each bite delivered the gentle seasoning of thyme and pepper, along with the rich taste of slow cooking. Served with a side of greens or cornbread, stewed chicken with rice became a meal that united generations, from small children to elders who valued tradition above all. The dish demonstrated how simple ingredients, treated with time and respect, could create a feast without extravagance. It was a true expression of care and patience, a dinner that spoke of family roots and the enduring comfort of a pot left to simmer while stories were shared nearby. Molasses cake brought the deep aroma of sorghum or blackstrap sweetness to the table, a moist spice cake that tasted of warmth and history. Grandma mixed flour, brown sugar, eggs, and rich dark molasses with cinnamon and ginger, creating a batter that filled the house with a fragrance as soon as it hit the oven. The cake baked into a tender crumb with a caramel-like depth that no other sweetener could match. Served plain or with a dollop of whipped cream, it carried the rich legacy of Southern kitchens, where molasses was a staple long before refined sugar became common. Each slice offered the comforting blend of spice and earthy sweetness, perfect with coffee after supper or as a midday treat with neighbors. Molasses cake reflected a time when every ingredient told a story of trade, labor, and the creativity of cooks who made do with what was on hand. It remained a beloved dessert that tied generations together with each moist, flavorful bite. Share your favorite grandma dish in the comments. Like if these flavors brought back memories, and subscribe to keep our heritage cooking alive.